can't be faked. A couple from Cardiff who planned the rape of young children have both been jailed. Stuart Compton got life and Tracy Turner was given 12 years for exchanging tens of thousands of messages fantasising about abusing 2 girls and a boy. Detective Inspector David Butt.
Offenders like Turner and Compton believe they can hide behind phone screens, but this is clearly not the case. The successful conviction of these 2 dangerous, high-risk sexual predators will ensure that children are protected.
And a murder investigation's been launched following the death of 2 men in a stabbing in South London. The police were called to Long Lane in Southwark this afternoon. In the city, the FTSE 100 has closed down 38 points at 90.81. The pound buys $1.33 and €1.15. LBC weather, cloud and rain moving into the west tonight, lows of 9. Rain moving eastwards tomorrow, drier elsewhere with sunny spells in Scotland, highs of 23. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Matt Hewitt.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Iain Dale.
Hello, a very warm welcome to Monday's Cross Question. I'm Iain Dale. With me on the panel are, making her debut on the programme, Laila Cunningham, Reform UK member of Westminster City Council. She's only been with Reform for a matter of weeks. She defected to them from the Conservatives. Next to her, Paul Richards, former Labour candidate, including for last year's general election. He was also special advisor to ministers in the previous Labour government, including the late lamented Hazel Blears. I miss Hazel Blears.
Me too.
My little chipmunk, I used to call her.
You did indeed.
We also have Samuel Kasumu, social entrepreneur, who was a civil society advisor to Boris Johnson while he was Prime Minister, and Christina McAnea, General Secretary of the Public Services Union, UNISON, the largest trade union in the country. They are here to take your calls, 0345 6060 973, and of course do tune in to us on Global Player.
0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Iain Dale. This is LBC.
Well, let's go to our first caller. It's Martin in Doncaster. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Iain. Hello. Yeah, the question is would the panel like to see our Prime Ministers and major politicians hold press conferences like Donald Trump because he's got character, he's not boring, and he's not reading from a piece of paper? Because that was box office this afternoon.
Unfortunately, I missed most of it, so I'll take your word for that. So the question is, Martin's line was a bit dodgy, so let me repeat the question. Would you like to see our Prime Minister and other major politicians hold press conferences like Donald Trump does? I think it would allow them to show their character more. Well, Paul Richards, you've got experience of advising politicians on how they should do press conferences. I can imagine Angela Rayner doing a press conference in the style of Donald Trump. I'm not sure I can imagine Keir Starmer.
No, that's fair. I think there's a bit of a culture clash here, which is that I think most British people watching that style find it quite offensive. It's kind of boorish, it's loutish, it's sort of ill-informed, and he just speaks his brains in any situation and doesn't have much mind to the kind of, you know, the insult or the hurt or the discomfort that it covers, it creates in other people. And if you saw the Prime Minister's body language, he was obviously very uncomfortable at some of the things that Trump was saying. So it might be box office, but I just don't think it's very good leadership.
So you can't see any British politicians adopting that style?
Well, I think they'd be foolish to, because it just opens up the possibility of all kinds of, you know, terrible things that might crash markets and cause wars and God knows what else. You know, the senior levels of politics, it has to be a little bit controlled and scripted, dare I say, because they're dealing with serious issues.
Samuel?
Yeah, I have a slightly different view. I think there is a lot of value in knowing where somebody is at and what they're thinking. I think most people don't like politicians today because they think that politicians don't speak their mind. They're always trying to dodge the truth. They're always trying to find a way not to establish facts. There's also nothing wrong with discomfort. You know, one person once said to me many years ago that peace is not the absence of conflict. Sometimes it's okay to see leaders have a difference of opinion played out in front of the public, because ultimately they represent the masses who might have similar views anyway. So,
but he was a guest in our country. He was a guest, and he should have behaved with a bit more humility.
You can be a guest somewhere and still say what's on your mind and tell the truth. And at least the thing that I would say Keir Starmer probably values in Donald Trump to a large extent, even though he probably doesn't agree with a lot of his politics, is at least he knows what's on his mind. You can't say the same for a lot of the leaders across the world, including across the European Union.
We certainly know what's on his mind, but it's in real time, and everything he thinks, it seems, just comes out of his mouth.
But I'd like to...
hang on, Laila. Christina.
So the answer to the question for me would be, oh God, no. I don't want to see British politicians behaving like that. I think Keir Starmer has... I think people want to see a bit of passion and maybe compassion. They want to see a bit of personality. But, Donald Trump always comes across as someone with, a fairly limited vocabulary. He's a very, very nice man, or he's a very, very bad person. I don't think he projects what America is really about for lots of people. And that, I know a lot of people probably look at him, if you're American, and think, is that really who's representing our country? Obviously he is, but I do think British politicians have to perhaps loosen up a little bit. But the danger you've got with Donald Trump, it's not so much that he speaks his mind, it's that you don't know, from one day to the next, he just contradicts himself all the time. He'll say something as a fact, and then 3 days later, when it's been proven that it's not, he'll say, I never said that, or that's not true.
That's
I
Keir
never
Starmer.
said that.
That's not Trump.
That's not Keir Starmer. Seriously, Trump does do this all the time. Yeah. He'll say certain things. His press officer will come in and say, no, what the president means is, and then 2 days later she's having to backtrack and say, well, no, that's not what he said, that's not what he meant.
Laila.
I don't agree with anyone. I think it's a very kind of liberal, elite way of thinking. He doesn't speak right, he doesn't use the same words. And it's a bit condescending to the US voters to say that he doesn't represent England, the US. He won both votes. I can't remember what it's called. He won in states and counties that were never Republican. And with no offence, but it's not up to you to say that he doesn't represent America.
No,
because the
vote,
which is the way people show how they feel, is what represents America. And it's very typical of Labour and the liberal lefty to say, he doesn't represent America. He doesn't use big words that we learnt in Oxford or Cambridge. That is not real America.
Well, and I didn't go to either Oxford or Cambridge, I have to say.
Well, obviously, you value that kind of education in our... And I don't know if you've watched Nigel Farage in his press conferences. He's very frank. He never dodges a question, and he answers it fully. And again,
but he also indulges in a bit of Trumpery sometimes, doesn't he? He did that last week when he was alleging that people were being that counter demonstrators were being bussed into Epping, and it turned out to be complete fiction.
I think the difference is also when he does his Trumpisms, Nigel, it's calibrated and thought through in advance. He does it on purpose, and he says these very clever things which then generate lots of social media hits and all the rest of it. But he's not just... The thing for me about Trump is it sort of sometimes it feels like he's in sort of mental decline. He just says things out loud.
What you mean, like Biden, that they hid that he was in actual mental decline?
Yeah, maybe like Biden.
Labour
yes,
went
that's
to
right.
campaign for Biden.
It might be like
someone
Biden
who was
in the
actually
sense that
senile, and they hid it from the public. They knew for ages. That's what Labour represents.
It might be like that. Senile. That's right. Trump might be in the same situation of being in cognitive decline, which is what his voice suggests.
Fully on the game. He said a few things that not insulting at all to someone who knows what they're doing. He said...
Well, he insulted Sadiq Khan.
Well, you can blame him. But he said the way to keep a good government is low taxes, low crime, low immigration, and low-cost energy. Everything, the total opposite of what Labour's doing. So no wonder he was insulted.
Trump has got the lowest ratings of any president in this particular time.
You mean Keir Starmer?
No, I mean
actually,
Trump.
his ratings are very high.
They're not.
Yeah, but so is Keir Starmer.
Keir Starmer has the worst rating.
But we're talking about Donald Trump.
No,
Donald Trump has got incredibly low rating. He had the worst ratings.
Laila, you can't talk over everybody because people at home haven't got a clue who's speaking, and I know you've got a very different accent to Christina, but even so.
Trump, after 100 days, Trump had the worst rating of any president after 100 days. He won by a fairly small margin, but I accept what Laila's saying. He did win, and who am I to say how the American people should vote? It's one of the largest democracies in the world, and I respect their decision. But I don't think you can say that Donald Trump I don't think he covers himself in glory when he makes these kind of speeches, because he is so contradictory,
Okay.
and he makes these promises about solving things in a day, and months later we're still waiting for his answer to some of the big world problems.
Illegal immigration is down to 0 in the US because of things Trump did. Under Labour, illegal immigration has doubled.
Yeah, I'm not keen on building walls and putting military
Not talking about building walls, we're just talking about taking it seriously.
Okay, let's do a follow-up question with John in Hammersmith. Hello, John.
Hi. Getting a little heated there, but...
You can bring some calm into the conversation, John.
Well, okay. So, on the global stage now, Mr. Trump's secondary tariffs that are due to be announced if countries don't stop trading with Russia. And I'm thinking specifically about 2 recent conflicts, Indo-Pakistan and Cambodia, Thailand, both of which had involvement from China.
I need your question, John.
Does the panel think that the secondary tariffs will cause conflict, and if so, where?
Now, Donald Trump has now given Putin 10 or maybe 12 days, he said, to agree a ceasefire in Ukraine, or he will impose 100% tariffs against all nations which are still trading with Russia. And that would be quite something to do. Christina?
Well, where do you go on Trump tariffs? Because the figures go up and down. I mean, he was threatening all sorts of high tariffs, then they've come down again, thankfully. Will he actually be able to deliver that? I think it's I think it's probably unlikely, and that he'll probably change his mind again. I think it would be very damaging for the economy of probably lots of parts of the world, including the UK, if he introduces these kind of tariffs. So I think it'd be a disaster, but I'm not 100% convinced that he'll follow through on it.
Laila?
So I don't know if you remember, but when he tried to deport people to Colombia, just like we're trying to deport rape gangs back to Pakistan, when they said no, mid-flights, he said, well, you're going to have 100% tariffs. And what did Colombia do? It accepted them and issued an apology. That, for me, is leadership. He's doing what people voted for, whereas Keir Starmer is doing the total opposite. And we don't need... I don't know if you know, but China is deemed a developing country. So it has a lot more rights when it comes to trade that our countries don't. What we really need with China is regulatory parity. And that right now, that doesn't happen. So right now, if you open a company in China, you have to have a Chinese person who has a stake in it. In the US, Chinese companies open with no US stake. And that's the key. China is abolishing all the manufacturing and industrial.
This is a question about Russia.
No, I know.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, if you can get Russia to come to the table, do whatever it takes.
Paul?
I think Putin is playing Trump like a violin, frankly, and he's just stringing him along. And Trump thinks that everything's a land deal or a real estate deal or a transaction, and Putin's playing a very different game. And this amusing acronym has sprung up in American discourse, hasn't it? TACO, which is Trump always chickens out. So they're saying, well, he says these things, this will happen in 2 weeks' time, but he always comes down from his position and chickens out. And Putin knows that. I mean, I am intrigued by the idea of going after the oligarchs, though, because they will be ultimately the people who could bring down Putin or reverse the war aims of invasion of Ukraine and put sort of financial pressure on them, I think. But these tariffs, I think, like all the others, they'll come, they'll go, there'll be a press conference and TACO.
It's the art of the deal.
Yeah,
which he didn't write. He didn't write the art of the deal, did he? He's one of the worst business people in the face of the planet.
Says someone who's never ran a business.
Yeah, look, just on the first question, I think we can all agree that Nigel Farage is a better politician than Donald Trump, in the sense that at least it always seems as if Nigel Farage has done some research before he makes statements, whether we agree with them or not. Donald Trump sometimes just shoots from the hip. In terms of the trade deficits with smaller countries that might be doing business with Russia, I'm not sure 100% tariff is going to make that much of an impact if they're not already trading very well with the US already. But also, Russia are part of the BRICS, some of the largest, fastest growing economies in the world, including China, including India. And so, is there a likelihood that they're going to stop doing business with Russia in the next 12 days? Absolutely not. And is there a likelihood that the US is going to impose 100% tariffs on countries like India and China? Also, absolutely not. And so I think Donald Trump is still, without a shadow of a doubt, the most powerful man in the world. And it's good that sometimes he's very, very honest, but he probably needs to maybe taper at times some of the things that he says. And the main point is this: if you keep threatening to do things and you never seem to deliver in a way that is decisive, then individuals like Putin will continue to do what they're doing, which is kicking the can down.
And Trump famously thought that Spain was one of the BRICS countries, wasn't he? There is you can Google this, folks. And he said Spain, they're a BRICS country, aren't they? Do you know what BRICS are? And he obviously didn't.
It was interesting in the press conference when he was talking about the boats, and Keir Starmer said, we're doing everything possible. Is that housing them in 4-star hotels? It's doubled. What exactly is the Labour Party doing to stop the boats? Everything possible.
Laila, in the first 17 minutes of the programme, 3 times you've tried to divert the question onto something completely unrelated. It's not going to happen a 4th time, let me just tell you that. It's 17 minutes past 8.
This is LBC. Cross Question with Iain Dale. Watch live on both Global Player and the new LBC app.
18 minutes past 8 on LBC. Laila Cunningham is a newly... I was going to say newly defected. That doesn't really work grammatically, does it?
A
new member of Reform UK. She's a Westminster City Councillor. Samuel Kasumu, social entrepreneur. Paul Richards, former Labour candidate and special advisor. And Christina McAnea, leader of Britain's biggest union. Now, did I read the other day that your term is nearly up, Christina?
I've got another 6 months to go. But
What happens then? Are you going to...
Yeah, I'm standing again.
I thought you might be. I just wanted you to confirm it. Excellent. Right, let's go to Ulf in Hamburg. Ulf, hello, what would you like to ask?
Good evening, Pavel. Good night, Ian. Well, the UK has a more advantageous trade deal with the US than the EU. How do you intend to take advantage of that, and how long do you think it's going to last?
Laila.
I don't know if we have a signed trade deal yet.
Well, we haven't negotiated. I'm not sure it's actually come into force yet, but the terms of it are certainly more advantageous than the one that the EU has just negotiated.
All I can say is thank God we voted for Brexit.
I thought you might say that.
No, I mean, I think Donald Trump has a very soft spot for England, rightly so, and we should take advantage of that.
UK.
The UK, sorry. And we should take advantage of that. But I'd like to see a signed deal.
How do you think we can do that?
I think we should develop our defence agreement, like AUKUS. We need to build more on that. We're very strong defence military partners with the US, and I don't think the governments are taking advantage of that more. We're one of their strongest allies, and they're one of ours.
Paul?
Well, I certainly agree with Laila on defence. I think we do need to invest more as a proportion of our GDP as this country, and that will involve some good trade deals. I think rearmament in the face of the threat we face is the right thing to do. But it also has a spin-off in terms of economic growth and jobs and up and down the supply chain. So we don't want to be here, but we are here, so we should make the best of it. However, this is unpopular, but I think our future does lie in closer cooperation with Europe and more trade with Europe. And we may be out of the EU, but it doesn't mean we have to ignore them and pretend they don't exist. I think we should actually just try and find ways to reopen some of those trade agreements and get more, with our closest neighbour, more trade going.
Christina.
Yeah, I think we need to. I agree with what Paul's just said. I think we do need to look at trying to deal with some of the damage caused by Brexit. I mean, it's been a total disaster in many ways for this country, and
not in this way though.
Not in this way, but in other
pretty
ways.
Big way as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a good trade deal that we've got with
it's a beautiful way.
It's a bit like a big beautiful bill. I think building on what we've got with the United States is good, but I have to say, and you wouldn't expect a trade unionist to say anything different, I'm not a big fan of complete free trade. I mean, I think there's a reason why we have tariffs. There's a reason why you protect your domestic industries, and I think you have to make sure that whatever trade deals we're doing don't undermine our existing industries in this country, and that we actually we're able to make sure that we can invest in our economy and export goods from this country in a way that is advantageous to this country. So I think you have to balance these things just to make sure that we're not giving away too much to any other country.
Yeah, I think that our trade deal is not the only Brexit benefit that we've experienced so far. When I was in Downing Street, of course, I led on the vaccine deployment, and we were one of the first to secure a vaccine because we weren't part of the European Union. I think there are other benefits, but in terms of this particular deal that's been negotiated, but firstly under obviously the previous Conservative administration, then Keir Starmer, including us being able to protect our agricultural sector. A lot of people thought that we weren't going to be able to do that as much as we can, or we have. And I think that's a huge market for the UK because we have tougher rules. Agriculture produces better quality meats, for example, and we don't glue our steaks together like they do in some parts of the US. And so they use glue to put together pieces of red meat, and in some of the restaurants and sellers, this is fact. It's not like me just dreaming this out.
I've never read that.
Yeah,
I'll believe you. Thousands wouldn't.
Chlorinated chicken, etc.
Don't start that old canard again.
We've done.
Have you ever been to the United States? Have you eaten American chicken? Because it's very tasty. And this whole thing.
The reason why it's tasty.
It's big and juicy.
But the point is, nobody's going to be forced to eat chlorinated chicken. They will have a choice. And if they want to, they can. I wouldn't want to particularly, but you'll have a choice.
But in some restaurants, you just wouldn't know, would you? If you go,
I don't know if I'm eating halal or kosher in a restaurant either. Sometimes,
which is also true. Fair point. Now, back to the question.
The thing is,
sorry, I was doing what Laila was doing there, wasn't I?
I think in the longer term, Britain has so much opportunity because we've left the European Union, because where you have most of the economic growth in the world are not places like countries in the European Union where you have aging populations, low resources, economic stagnation. There are countries that are growing, including the US, which is obviously one of the largest markets in the world. And so actually there are many opportunities to benefit from it. One more thing I would say is the service sector in particular is a place where we see huge amounts of growth in the US, because unfortunately for us, our wages are significantly lower on average than in the US. And so actually for a lot of businesses that wish to grow and expand, it makes a lot of sense, US business, it makes a lot of sense to leverage off our talent, our capabilities, because it helps them to grow, but it also helps us to grow too.
We will never be as good as the US in terms of any kind of industry with all the regulation that stifles innovation. The reason why people voted for Brexit, one of them, is to deregulate from the EU. The Tories failed miserably on that. Kemi was in charge of it. She only took away 400 totally insignificant regulation. For instance, a vacuum cleaner has like 300 regulation in the EU. In the US, it has none. If it sells, it sells. The market decides. And with regulation in this country, we are not allowing the consumer and the market to decide. We're allowing the government and quangos to choose the losers and the winners. And that's not a market economy. Even if it sort of
spontaneously combusts and burns down your house, at least there aren't the regulations.
You won't buy it again.
There's no answer to that. None of you have mentioned inward investment, because to my mind, this means that we are going to be so attractive to other countries to base their plants here as opposed to the EU. Particularly, I mean, if I was an Irish politician, I would be quite sort of frightened about the prospect of this, because Ireland has done a brilliant job in attracting inward investment, but Ireland is now going to be subject to far higher tariffs than we are. And I suppose depending on what market sector you're in, that should be a huge advantage to us, shouldn't it, Christina?
Yeah, you would think so. I mean, I want to see more business coming to this country. I want to see businesses flourishing, because that's how you raise revenue and that's how you fund the public services that the people who pay into UNISON do. So, it's kind of win-win if you can get this right. But I do think you have to make sure. I'm not a fan of complete deregulation. And I mean, I think some of the fact
that the front page.
some regulation is absolutely essential. I mean, it's like one person's deregulation is somebody else's health and safety nightmare, and like that, things exploding. The lack of safety that we see in some areas, the lack of regulation that we saw is what's led to some big disasters in this country, not least of which was Grenfell.
And Laila, that is true, isn't it? I mean, I want a small state. I want as much deregulation as possible, but you can't deregulate everything, because there are dangers if you go too far.
No. Some things require regulation, but we are over-regulated, and Christina mentions Grenfell. That was highly regulated. That was a Conservative council that allowed people to build with flammable cladding, that specifically had instructions that it should not be in high-rise buildings, and it was. You can't blame regulation on that. In fact, it was highly regulated. It was a failure on behalf of the council and the builders, and I'm surprised no one's been prosecuted for it. But it is well known, regulation stifles innovation. That's why America is beating us on every front. You mentioned about salary parity between us and the US. It wasn't so different 20 years ago. It is different now. I mean, my niece's friend just got a job in Nvidia, and she would say, if I moved to the US with the same job, I'd get paid 3 times more. And you've got to ask yourself, and property prices are so high, we have 30 and 40-year-olds that can't afford a home because salaries are not keeping up with the price of housing.
But these are all arguments that 6 weeks ago you would have put the opposite argument to, because you were a Conservative.
No, I was very silent the past few years.
I can't imagine that for a moment. Shall we hear from Ulf in Hamburg? Ulf, what ideas do you have for Britain to take advantage of being outside the EU?
First of all, get a plan. This really reminds me of Brexit. Even if you get what you want, you don't have a plan for what to do with it. Second, if you make yourself dependent on the US in the field of defense, you will live to regret it. So if you invest in your own defense, make sure it's either European or independent. I know most special relationship and all that, you shouldn't believe it all that much. Economically, have a plan B, because with Donald Trump, you never know. The whole thing is not unlikely to fall apart within a year or a week.
Paul?
Well, first of all, it's a great opportunity for you, Iain, to do your fluent German. I'm hoping that you would do that, but no, obviously not.
No, I think listeners are rather bored of me doing that, frankly.
But I would say the premise of the question you asked us about inward investment has been echoed by what Ulf has said, which is you can't map out an industrial strategy or an investment strategy based on what Trump says, because it does fold, in the first bit of scrutiny. We don't know how long he's going to be around for. There is this supposed plot of advancing Vance and replacing him with the vice president, who may have an entirely different view on tariffs and what levels they should be set at and which countries need to be rewarded or punished. So the premise of the question was, we're in a great place for inward investment. I wish that were true, but I don't think there is the stability to guarantee it.
Where was the first place Donald Trump visited when he left the United States after becoming president?
Saudi Arabia.
When we're talking about inward investment, unfortunately for the West, there are new players in town who are a lot more important with deeper pockets, who are going to dominate the rest of the world for many, many years to come.
But you've seen, how can you have inward investment when you have a government that's increasing taxes all the time on companies? You have companies that are running away. All our big unicorns are listing in New York. You've got to ask yourself why. Inward investment is not only down to Donald Trump's, it's down to the government and how receptive they are to business.
They haven't haven't raised taxes in governments and in companies. We've had an increase in national insurance contributions.
Well, that's a tax.
That's the only one. It's not as if they're raising tax all the time. We've got one of the lowest rates of corporation tax in the developed world.
No, we haven't.
We have.
No, we haven't. The Conservatives put it up.
Yeah,
and
but
it's now about the average European level.
It's still lower than a lot of other places. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's still lower than a lot of other places. We don't have the same capital gains tax. There's lots of areas where the government could actually increase taxes.
What is this obsession with people on the left about increasing taxes?
Because how else do you get money to fund
grow the economy?
services?
But you can go too far. That's the point.
You can, but I don't think we have gone too far.
Do you not think that Rachel Reeves went too far on the national insurance
No,
rise?
I don't think that. I think she had to introduce...
So it's cost your union members their jobs, and you still think it's... Of course it has.
Very few people have actually lost their jobs as a result of this.
Christina, you could grow the economy and not raise taxes. Have you thought of that?
Yeah.
You can what?
The private sector should pay for the public sector, but right now you are asking the taxpayer to pay for the public sector. That's not right. You grow the economy by no, it's not. You grow the economy by growing the private sector, and right now Labour's policies are driving big companies away.
And you can't have a private sector without a flourishing public sector, because otherwise...
I'm sure you can.
Well, you can't. Because who's going to look after people who are ill? Who's going to educate children in schools? Who's going to make sure the roads are right to allow people to get through?
Do you know that 40p of every pound spent in this country is spent by the public sector? And so the reality is
60p of every pound is spent by public sector wages. For every pound that they get, 60p is spent in the local community.
But that's the point. The state is big. It should not get any bigger than it currently is.
No.
It's just not a sustainable model. And on the NI increases, even charities, large and small, have said that they are going to struggle to be, at the front and centre of responding to some of our biggest challenges because of the NI increase. Every single organisation of any type is struggling because of our taxation today, and that's just a fact.
That's just
and
not a fact.
I'm not an extremist in any way. I'm fairly moderate, but that's the fact.
There's not huge redundancies happening across the country. There are some in some areas.
Private sector. You guys are living the high life while the rest of us are paying for it.
Literally.
Seriously, I've just been down to a strike last week where people who are phlebotomists who do a fantastic job are on £12.56 an hour. I hardly think that is leading the high life. That's the reality for loads of public sector workers. They earn barely above the minimum wage. And why we need better investment in our public services is not just so that we can attract the best people to them, but it's actually to look after people in this country.
Where does that investment come from?
The economy. Do you know that what I was saying to Samuel was, for every pound that public sector worker earns, 60p of that is spent in their local community. They spend it in local shops. They buy goods from local businesses. That's how you help boost the economy.
Now you're talking over each other again, and I'm going to talk over all of you because we have to go to the news. It's all kicking off, ladies and gentlemen. It's 8:33 news headlines on LBC with Matt Hewitt.
Sir Keir Starmer and Donald Trump have agreed urgent action must be taken to end suffering in Gaza, with the US president saying real starvation is happening there. The two leaders are in Aberdeen for a private dinner following talks in South Ayrshire. 2 men have been killed and a third in a life-threatening condition after being stabbed in South London. They were among 4 people attacked at a business in Southwark this afternoon. A suspect who's been detained is in hospital. And the Lionesses have been celebrating their Euros win at an outdoor reception in the garden behind 10 Downing Street. The players and staff were hosted by the Deputy PM, Angela Rayner, with pictures of their highlights from the tournament displayed on large easels. LBC weather, cloud and rain moving into the west tonight, lows of 9. Rain moving eastwards tomorrow, but drier elsewhere with sunny spells in Scotland and highs of 23.
This is LBC. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
8:36 on LBC. Christina McAnea is here, General Secretary of UNISON. Samuel Kasumu, social entrepreneur. Paul Richards, former Labour advisor. And Laila Cunningham, Reform UK member of Westminster City Council. How have you been received, Laila, by your former Conservative colleagues? Do they still talk to you?
So I've been told that in the group chat, I'm like Voldemort. I am the one who must not be mentioned. They did try and smear me as usual. And then Labour put out the most wonderful leaflet saying reform-type politics doesn't belong in our community. Really good spirit. In my community, actually, because none of them even live in my ward. I'm the only one that lives there, raising a family. But yeah, I mean, it's the usual sneer and disdain that you get from Labour and Conservatives with reform.
Were you not tempted to call a by-election, though, to give your voters a choice to vote for a reform candidate?
Actually, we had a Labour councillor defect to Tories.
No, I'm asking about you. I'm asking about you.
Not at all, because my priorities haven't changed, and it's actually because of those priorities that I defected.
OK. Kevin in Birmingham asks this. Should doctors and nurses be banned from striking? Now, the Conservatives have proposed banning doctors from striking, with resident doctors in the British Medical Association set to hold the final day of their 5-day walkout tomorrow. Meanwhile, members of the Royal College of Nursing are expected to vote to reject the 3.6% pay rise, which nurses have been offered just days after NHS workers in the GMB union, which includes ambulance crews, rejected that same offer. Paul?
I don't think I'd go that far, because I'm not in favour of banning unions from able to, organise and negotiate, including industrial action. But I am very uncomfortable with the BMA strike at the moment, because I think, first of all, they were given an extremely generous pay award in the early days of the Labour government. And I think that they do very well compared to many other workers in the NHS and the wider public sector. So I'm not sure they're necessarily now, having had that award, the most deserving case for public money to go to them. But I think Kemi just seems to be, it seems quite a knee-jerk thing to say out loud. Maybe she'll think it's popular, but I don't know. It seems like a step far too far to start banning strikes. And I think the NHS does need reform too. So I do think Wes Streeting is absolutely right on this, that if there is going to be more money going in, it has to be alongside reforms which benefit patients.
Well, Kemi Badenoch will be in the studio with me tomorrow from 7 o'clock, so I'm sure somebody will phone in and ask her about that, and if they don't, I will. Laila?
I think I go back to the doctors, what they say, do no harm. And I think these strikes do a lot of harm. I mean, I come from a family of NHS doctors. My sister's a retired consultant paediatrician, never went private. Her daughter's also a consultant, and my nephew's an A&E doctor. I don't think doctors should strike, especially not with such a big waiting list. And I know what it's like to be waiting for that operation or that scan or that diagnosis. And it's very, very heart-wrenching. And I don't think they should. I mean...
Should they be banned from striking?
I have an issue with the word banned. I don't think they should be striking. That is my opinion. But like Paul said, the NHS has taken 40 billion in just 4 years. And outcomes haven't improved. Wait lists are at 7 million, and patient satisfaction is at a record low. I mean, I suffered a lot in the NHS. During COVID, my sister had stage 4 cancer, and it grew to stage 4 because of the lockdowns. And while she had stage 4 cancer, she had an injury in her hip, and she was put in a ward where she contracted COVID. And they released on the 6th day. You remember, on the 7th day is when it really hits, and she became very critical. They admitted her into hospital, and they would just not give her the utmost care because she was stage 4. She was gasping for breath. Every 3 days they'd ring us and say, she's about to die, come in. And my other sister, who was a consultant, said, actually, she's not about to die. Have you tried this? And she survived COVID. And every time we would leave, we'd have to have a TV, phone on her the whole time. The consultant would come in and ask her to sign a do not resuscitate. And she'd go, no, I want to live. And the doctor would say, why? You have stage 4 cancer. So there is a fundamental issue with the NHS. And I don't think striking doctors is the answer in any way. And I do agree that it does need reform. I mean, AI, I went to a Google Tech conference where AI now is beating radiologists almost by 95% in terms of diagnosis. It's heart-wrenching to wait for that MRI or that X-ray, and you're going to have machine learning that's going to compare it to 1 million X-rays and give you the answer on the spot. Why is that not in there already?
See, I think that's really frightening, but that's probably time. We'll talk about that another time. But I mean, whenever I hear the phrase AI, I kind of think I don't understand it.
No.
Part of me doesn't want to understand it. When you say something like that, it makes you think, well, it's got to be part of the future. Christina.
So, I mean, and Nigel Farage has said he wants an NHS which is based on the American insurance style system.
No, he didn't.
He has said that in the past.
No, he didn't.
Yes.
That's not his policy.
I mean, he has said it in the past. I mean, his own video saying it. And I think that would be a total disaster for this country. In terms of whether doctors should strike or not.
Well, no, the question is about should they be banned from striking?
Should they be banned? No, I don't believe in banning strikes. Unsurprisingly.
Because there are people in society who are banned from striking. The police.
We already have. So the Tories last time round introduced a thing called minimum service level agreements, or tried to. Not a single employer, private or public, used them. And we already have rules. We have the tightest legislation in Europe in terms of being able to take industrial action in this country, all of the hoops that you have to go through. And it's already quite difficult. And if they bring back if the Tories say they're going to bring back minimum service levels, it's completely unnecessary, because we already have legislation in this country which means that if you're going on strike, if a group are going on strike which causes significant harm to the public, life or limb harm, you can actually take an injunction against them to stop them doing that. And that already exists in this country. There's no need to start banning it. I mean, for me, the big issue is the way you deal with strikes is not to ban them. The way you deal with strikes is to talk to the people who are on strike, find out why, try and find a resolution. There's always a way to find a compromise through this.
It was the BMA that walked out of the talks with Wes Streeting.
It was, and I can't speak on behalf of another union about why. I don't know what happened in these talks. All I do know is we're, as a big NHS union, that there are some key issues that affect everyone in the NHS. We always make the point that the NHS is one team. It's not just doctors and nurses, it's a whole load of everybody else.
Well, it is,
who works there.
And the fact is that all of those groups are only being offered 2, 3, 4, 5%.
3.6.
And the resident doctors 5.4% on top of the 28% that they got last year. And I mean, as a trade union, I'm not trying to set worker against worker, but you must sit there thinking, well, hang on a minute. There are other people in the NHS that have the equally deserving cause.
We do make the case all the time for the fact that the NHS is dependent on a whole team of people who provide the services. So doctors couldn't do their job if you didn't have the cleaners in, making sure the place was kept clean, just as an example. So we make that case all the time, but there's lots of non-pay issues involved in this dispute.
And that's what Wes Streeting was saying. And that's why they walked out.
And we've been saying to Wes Streeting too that we also have issues that are of great concern to us. So we've got part of the pay offer that's available this year is 3.6% in pay, but then there's an additional sum allowed on top of that, which is to deal with some of the non-pay issues. So that's to deal with things around the grading structure and various other things that happen within the NHS that haven't been working for some time. So,
but you're happy to talk about those, whereas the BMA aren't.
Well, I think they will at some point sit down and talk to them. There's no other way through this. You have to sit down and talk to them, and I think the BMA will at some point come back to that. Okay. And I hope Wes Streeting will be open to sitting down and talking to them, because it will not be resolved without discussing the issues. Without both parties sitting down and discussing the issues, it just won't be resolved.
Seems like a power struggle now.
Yeah.
Samuel.
Yeah, I think that. I don't like it. I'm not comfortable with the idea of banning doctors from striking, although we do have appropriate thresholds for what has to happen for there to be a strike, and maybe they should be reviewed if strikes are something that happen on an ongoing basis. I think Wes Streeting was incredibly naive last year when he pretty much gave all of the unions what they wanted, health-related unions, expecting them not to come back for more. And fast forward 12 months, and now doctors are going to be on strike, demanding 29% plus. And so I think he needed to be tougher last year. He wasn't tough enough, and now he finds himself boxed into a corner. And the thing is, a lot of doctors, not just doctors, but a lot of people in the public sector argue that they've had real terms pay cuts over the last 10, 15 years because of various reasons in terms of it not wages not going up in line with cost of living, inflation, etc. And I think that's absolutely true. But ultimately, everybody in the private sector has had the same experience. And so I do worry about some of the rhetoric that sounds like a bit of exceptionalism. I think we've all, as a country, faced tough times. And so we have to be realistic about what the art of the possible is in terms of pay.
Right, we're going to have shorter answers from our panellists in the next quarter so we can fit in 3 questions. That's a promise. It's 8:46.
This is LBC. Cross Question with Iain Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
Christina, McAnea, Laila, Cunningham, Samuel Kasumu and Paul Richards answering your questions. Phil in Swindon says, MPs are now suggesting banning virtual private networks, VPNs, because the young people who the Online Safety Act is meant to help all know how to beat them. Is this new act just an annoyance to us less tech-savvy adults while having no effect at all on our kids? Well, in the interest of research last night, I went on to 5 porn sites, just in the interest of research. Not one of them had introduced this age verification, which I thought was quite shocking. Then I thought, well, maybe there's a grace period, but apparently there isn't. So that needs to be enforced. Now, Reform UK have today pledged to overturn the Online Safety Act if they win the next election, while senior Labour MP Sarah Champion says that if VPNs are preventing the Act's rules from being enforced, then ministers should take action to prevent them from being used. Over the weekend, VPNs were the most downloaded apps in the UK.
No way.
Laila.
So I don't think this online safety bill is purely for children. It's, as you've seen, they've created an elite squad to monitor political dissent. It is a form of censorship. I don't need Yvette Cooper or anyone telling me what I can see and what I can't see, and if it's dangerous and if it's not dangerous, I can be the judge of that. If they really wanted to focus on protecting children, they would call it the Child Online Safety Bills, and I'm not tech-savvy enough, but they have admitted that it is also to censor adults. And yes, I have teenagers that are way more tech-savvy than anyone who wrote this legislation, because you get a VPN, you can go on. I even read that they're taking photos of celebrities to beat the photo ID.
What do you mean?
So it's a photo ID.
They're pretending to be celebrities.
No, well, just to take an adult face to beat the identification process. I mean, let's tell it how it is. Labour like to censor. You know, they're coming up.
This was a Conservative. I mean, I'm sure.
No, Labour and Tories.
I'm sure when you were a Conservative, you were supporting this.
Absolutely not. It's the one bill that I never supported, because for me, freedom of speech should be an absolute. We should be able to be offended and offend.
Fine, but protecting children is the ultimate objective of this part of the Online Safety Act. And if it's not doing that, then something needs to be done to help it do that, surely.
So There will be other ways. Why? My only question is, why does the Labour Party feel that it has to censor adults?
Well, I'm not talking about censorship. I'm talking about protecting children.
I don't think you should remove VPNs.
I don't want to censor people. People can decide what they want to look at on the internet all by themselves.
Yes.
But children are mentally not capable of doing that, and they will be influenced by things that they see on sites that they should not be visiting. So therefore, surely it is the role of government to protect children from those sites.
I think tech companies can come up with better solutions in terms of identification. You do that, you're going to send them to the dark web where it's worse, and we won't be able to monitor what they see. I don't think VPN should be banned. I don't think online content should be censored. I think we can sit at a round table with the tech companies and find a tech solution that can prevent children from accessing this. Okay. And yeah, I don't think that's been...
Christina.
So apparently a big part of the porn that children are exposed to online is something that comes... They don't go looking for it, it pops up. So they're looking for something else and an advert pops up, or something will come in onto their screens and they see this. And we're talking really young children sometimes that see this, and they haven't, as I said, they haven't gone looking for it. And I agree that I think the tech companies absolutely should be able to do something about this. I mean, I'm sure if there was somehow money involved, I'm sure they manage.
Well, YouTube manage it, don't they? I mean, you don't get porn on YouTube.
Yeah, and there must be a way. So presumably, if Disney films were being shown online all the time and nobody was paying for it, I'm sure Disney cracked down on it, and that these companies probably step in and try and help them. It cannot be beyond the wit of these companies who claim to be among the most, clever companies in the world, with people who do these things all the time. There must be a way to stop it, and companies should be penalised if they don't stop it.
I was involved in a lot of this when I was in Downing Street. But you very seldom will you see porn on YouTube. Same for things like Twitter, X. You'll have
there's loads of porn on X.
Well, there are things that say you need to have age restriction sorted before you're allowed to view content that might be adult content. So they've got some kind of restrictions anyway. But the point is, this legislation is supposed to protect from sites that are specifically designed for people to view pornography. Number one. Number two, there have been countless examples of kids being exposed to content that's not pornographic, but encourages or allows them to do things that might result in them killing themselves. In fact, in my local area, there's one particular child who's 12 years old in a football team who was doing an activity and died. And so that happens very regularly, being taught how to commit suicide and things like that. And so you have to try and protect children from these things. The challenge is a lot of children are more tech savvy than their parents. And so how do you square the circle?
And the politicians.
Exactly. So how do you square the circle? Yes, you can say tech companies can do more, but there will never be a perfect solution. And so some of what you can do is at least try and make sure that the people who are viewing the content are age appropriate, which is never going to be perfect.
Paul?
I think it's a classic case where the legislation is chasing the technology, and the technology will morph and change and try and get around laws. But that doesn't mean you don't introduce the laws. You don't just create a sort of pornographer's charter by repealing the current law. What you do is make sure the law is fit for purpose. And if that means updating it and making sure that it's ahead of the technology, then we should. And Christine is absolutely right. The way to make this happen is to make it unprofitable for the companies to be doing it. And that means penalising them or fining them or just removing their business model so they can't get away with it. But I mean, I'm a parent and it terrifies the life out of me on the sorts of things that my kids are going to be able to see without regulation. So we can argue about regulation, but at the end of the day, government has to protect children.
Right, no, let's move on because we're nearing the end. Stephen is in East Grinstead. Hi, Stephen.
Good evening, Ian. Good evening, panel. My question is, should or will the Lionesses' legacy be there are no barriers to what kids and teens can achieve because of their background, gender or race?
Or ability to take penalties. Samuel?
Yeah, I think the Lionesses have shown just what is possible when you have the right type of manager, great players, and people committed to a unified cause. Just like, fine, the men haven't won a trophy since 1966, but they've gotten to 2 finals. And every single time that they have played in an international tournament, everyone's felt a bit more English. And I think that what they represent is...
Unless you're Scottish, eh?
Oh, unless, well, yeah. Who knows? He lives in London.
I saw a really funny meme on Facebook today where they got the whole of Europe with a Spanish flag over every single country, and just England with a sort of the not the Union Jack, well, the flag of St George, and basically everybody was wanting the Spanish to win, which I don't think was true.
It probably is true, but the important point is this: how can we harness that energy? How do we harness that energy for us to feel more like one nation more often?
Paul.
I bought my railway ticket this morning at the Eastbourne railway station, and the guy sold it to me saying that he's involved in the local team in Eastbourne, the football team, and he said in the last 48 hours they've been inundated with parents and with young girls wanting to get involved in football as a result of this amazing victory. And I just think that's brilliant. You know, there should be no barriers. I mean, Stephen's right. There shouldn't be barriers based on class or race or gender to involvement in sport. And if this gets more girls playing football, then that's going to be just the best thing ever.
Laila.
There are barriers, and there are barriers in that grassroots sports and youth centres have been shut down. So you cannot engage in group. When I grew up, I used to play in the London Youth Games, and I used to play all the boroughs, and it kept me out of trouble. I wouldn't smoke a cigarette because my coach would notice if we're breathless, and that's been decimated by Labour and Conservatives across the country. And that's something Reform want to focus on. Youth centres and youth sports doesn't exist anymore. If you don't have money to put your kid into something, you're not going to engage. So we can all talk about how to, get everyone engaged, but we need more at a grassroots level.
Christina, why is Scotland so useless at women's and men's football?
Oh, don't ask me. I have to say football's not my thing. I'm a bit of a rugby fan. I'm not a big football fan, but I do think the Lionesses have done a fantastic job, and I think it's a feel-good factor, isn't it? And actually, I have to say, I've got lots of friends and family in Scotland who also think what happened was fantastic. To see a team of young women play so well throughout the tournament, and they're so joyous about it that I think it's been amazing. But I just want to say it's great to hear Reform talking up public services. It's amazing. We all want to see investment in local public services too, and I hope that will help. That's something we can see in the Reform councils coming forward, that they'll be investing in local sports centres. Can't wait.
Laila, I thought you were going to want to come back on that one, but you've been rendered mute.
No, I'm not rendered mute, and it's not necessarily public services. Some of the grassroots basketball is run privately, but so many sports centres have been shut down because local councils don't value it. And I'm sure you'll see a correlation between youth crime and the shutting down of youth centres and grassroots sports over the past 20 years.
I'm sure that's true.
How long were you a Conservative councillor?
Since 2022.
Any idea how many of these facilities have been closed under... Actually, it's been a Labour council in Westminster.
No, but under the Tories, they shut a lot of youth centres. In fact, I called one of my ex-coaches and I set up the Lancaster Gate basketball team, got him private funding, and he set up a local team that's free to access. So you can also do it through the private sector.
Right, final question, fun question from Charlie in Leeds. A video on social media appears to show Trump cheating at golf while playing around at Turnberry over the weekend. A caddie appears to have dropped a ball halfway along one of the fairways. Confession time. Which sport or game have you cheated at, and did you get away with it? Paul.
I used to be very, very fat, Ian, and I didn't play any
remember
games.
those days.
I hit 20 stone at one point, but I'm not that now, I should stress. But that meant growing up I didn't do any sport.
So this is why you should always watch on Global Player, because you can see Paul is telling the truth.
It is true. So I didn't cheat at games because, alas, I didn't play any.
Clever answer. Politician's answer. Samuel.
Well, my family notoriously don't like playing Monopoly with me.
I have that problem too.
Yeah, so there is this assumption, which I'm not confessing to, that I tend to cheat when playing that game. Especially after Christmas dinner. It's always
okay.
Very aggressive.
Laila?
So it's a seminal moment in every parent's life when the kids are cleverer than you and bigger than you and just better at sports. And if they beat me, I don't hear the end of it. So I will do everything I can to beat them at any sport and any game I play.
What kind of mother are you?
Well, I'm a mother that teaches them about competition.
You are the Sue Ellen Ewing of this panel. Actually, some of you won't get that. Christina?
I have to confess that I've also cheated at Monopoly, but
really,
the one that I probably have cheated most at is I love playing cards, and
Me too.
I've occasionally cheated. But actually the opposite from what Laila's just said. Especially when my children were young, I used to cheat to let them win. But I have also cheated.
Never.
I will admit I have occasionally cheated to win as well.
Nobody plays cards anymore, do they?
Poker. People play poker.
I still play
Poker,
cards, but not as much as I used to. But it used to be something we always did when we went on holiday. We'd always take it, and I still do that. Take cards and play cards.
We took cards when I went to Corfu with my sister and her family and played every night.
Nice.
Anyway, thank you all very much indeed for coming on the panel tonight. Tomorrow we have Guardian columnist Polly Toynbee, the businessman and former independent mayor of Middlesbrough Andy Preston, human rights campaigner Aisha Ali Khan, and the editor of the website The Article, Daniel Johnson. So they'll be ready for your questions, as will Kemi Badenoch at 7 o'clock. Coming up in the next hour, we're going to talk... What are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about Manjaro. Paul, you see, you were ahead of your time on this one, weren't you? Because...
so that is cheating, Ian.
Well, it kind of is, and that's really what we're going to talk about, because I think a lot of people imagine that it's a quick fix. And it is a quick fix, but surely you then live to regret it. And I think the question we're asking is, should able-bodied young people really be allowed access to these kind of drugs? Because around a third of younger people think they should be getting it by right, but pharmacies haven't got enough of it to dole out. So what should the future be for these weight loss drugs?
On your radio, on the LBC app, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, the Prime Minister and Donald Trump have agreed urgent action must be taken to bring an end to misery and starvation in Gaza. The two leaders have travelled to Aberdeen in Air Force One for a private dinner at the US president's other Gulf resort. Mr. Trump also suggested he will cut short a 50-day deadline given to President Putin to agree a deal with Ukraine. The US president says he'd thought reaching an agreement would be more straightforward.
We thought we had that settled numerous times, and then President Putin goes out and starts launching rockets into some city like Kiev. And I say, that's not the way to do it. So we'll see what happens with that. I'm very disappointed. I'm disappointed in President Putin. So we're going to have to look, and I'm going to reduce that 50 days that I gave